Welcome to OTR Debate, our off-the-record podcast where three lawyers debate all things while managing to find out how it all comes back to the law. My name is Lando. I'm a prosecutor. I'll be the judge for this brawl between One Piece and The Last Airbender. On the side of One Piece, we have a man that's been to the dojo several times to prepare for this match.
Well, the Dice Dojo where I played the One Piece card game at the store here in Edgewater.
Oh, okay. That makes way more sense.
Yeah.
So we have Mucci for One Piece.
Yes. I'm Mucci. I work in immigration and, representing One Piece.
Okay, and so on the side of The Last Airbender, we have a guy that's airbending his way around Chicago. He is super busy. I'm glad that he's even here right now. We have Wee.
Hi everyone, I'm Wee. I do commercial contracts and I wish I could airbend.
The air is at his back constantly as he's biking all over the city.
Yeah, pretty much. For this episode, we have a special guest from Senor Nerd Podcast who will be talking to us about these live actions and maybe a little bit of, everything else. As always, the format is opening statements followed by questions from me. We always have a legal question and then closing arguments. So, with that being said, are you guys ready for this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, you better be. All right, so we flipped a coin and Wee's won first?
Yeah, that's right. Avatar: The Last Airbender is an animated series, children's show produced by Nickelodeon that has a total of 3 seasons. It ran from 2005 to 2008, and also has a sequel series, The Legend of Korra. Avatar, it really revolutionized what children's television could be by being unafraid to tackle complex and nuanced topics that were previously not covered in programming aimed at children, such as genocide, war, displacement, and corruption. And furthermore, in my opinion, Avatar: The Last Airbender demonstrated what a show with representation of Asian culture, people with disabilities, and feminist ideals should look like. It's won several awards, including a Peabody Award, Kids' Choice Award, and even a Primetime Emmy. And currently, to this day, has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes still. And critics and audiences alike still regard it a must-watch and consider it to be one of the best animated television shows of all time.
100%. I don't think there's anything higher than that, Mucci. Go ahead with your opening, though.
Well, I want to start with a bit of a personal connection, and it relates to a promo we did a while back when I was about a year ago, when I was first starting to read One Piece. And a few people commented, this is one of the greatest stories ever written. And I'm like, really? This thing? It's over 1,000 chapters long. How can it sustain itself? And it really, really does. And it only gets better with time. So it's about this journey that Monkey D. Luffy is going on to reach the One Piece.
Excuse me?
That's his name, Monkey D. Luffy.
Okay.
We don't know what the One Piece is, but it must have something to do with enlightenment. I'll get into that a little bit later. But I want to just draw in my opening on the world building and the acclaim of One Piece. So we're talking about the 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. I wanted to point to a streak in One Piece that I've never seen anywhere else. On IMDb, there is 30 episodes in a row rated 9.0 or above. I don't think that there's that in any other show. And this is in the Marineford arc. Later in the most recent arc, this happens again, like almost 23 straight episodes of 9 or above on IMDb. Universally acclaimed arcs, and so it shows that the show still has this consistency and is still incredible to this day. It's not like it's all in the beginning and they just ran out of steam. And I also wanted to point out just how rich the world is of One Piece. I'll get to more of that a little bit later, but characters will be introduced, or storylines will be introduced early on. The characters will move on, you'll think it's all over, and in a lesser story it would be, but here in One Piece, 400 episodes later, this might come back in a very interesting way. And I'll detail that more in the questions later, but I just wanted to preview those things.
That's a pretty good preview. Pretty good preview. All right, so as always, I've got questions for you guys, debaters, councils. Pretend I've never seen these shows or read anything about them. Obviously, I'm very well versed in both. But
Is it obvious?
But pretend I'm starting from zero and describe the worlds that are brought to life with each show and some key aspects about them that you think make them the 100%, the 9.0, which is less than 100%.
Or above, 9.0 or above, I said.
So describe those aspects about the shows if you want to.
Okay, sir. I want to draw on the literary connections to this, to One Piece, and the literary inspiration, and you can see why it's recognized as one of the best stories ever written. So I want to take us back.
Rocky was the best story ever written. So, council, just tread lightly.
I said one of.
Just tread lightly. Okay.
I said one of the best stories. It's One Piece. The One Piece. It's like a Seinfeld bit or something. All right. So in 1592. Right. This Chinese novel, Journey to the West, was published.
Okay.
And it depicted this legendary journey of a Buddhist monk and 3 companions on their journey to enlightenment. Now, it was based a little bit on a real-life monk that went on an epic pilgrimage, but there's elements of folk tales added to it. There's comical elements, satire, and there's just stuff that could not happen in real life. So they encounter fantastical creatures, go to different lands. There's a layer of spider spirits. There's an all-female kingdom. So this is kind of, this ancient novel. And now one of the main characters in this cast is known as the Monkey King. And his character is often one of the most popular. So, for example, the first English translation that was really popular was just called Monkey. And there's a Japanese TV series adapting the story known in English as Monkey. So just keep that character in mind.
Monkey.
Yeah.
Got it.
So this story from the 16th century has been incredibly popular on manga and anime series, many of them. And 2 of them, though, stand head and shoulders above the rest. So one manga series by Akira Toriyama started coming out in 1984. And initially depicted a young boy with a monkey's tail who joins a young girl on her epic journey to find 7 magical orbs. So an epic journey, a quest. The kid later loses the tail, grows up, and continues on his quest to become the strongest person in the world. So that character is, of course, Son Goku. This is Dragon Ball, and he's helping out Bulma to find the Dragon Balls. And this is one of the best-selling manga series of all time, certainly very popular. Now, the other one is the best manga series of all time, the best-selling manga series of all time, excuse me, but also maybe the best, One Piece. So this story depicts the epic journey of Monkey D. Luffy and his pirate crew as they also traverse a variety of fantastical worlds, including also an all-female kingdom and many other ones. There's fishmen, there's giants, there's animal people, and he's trying to become the king of the pirates. So this is begun in 1997 by mangaka Eiichiro Oda, and he's been writing it for 27 years almost now. He pretty much draws everything except for the backgrounds and still writes the story. It's still the work of basically one incredibly creative person.
Maybe he's the One Piece.
He's just on the last island at the end. It's me. So his inspirations include the aforementioned Journey to the West, of course. Dragon Ball was also an inspiration on him. Pirate biographies. So he draws on history and adds his own fantastical elements. So he really has created one of the greatest stories of all time with all these influences. That is 1,100 chapters in, over 1,000 episodes in, and is reaching a conclusion sometime in the next couple of years, maybe, without ever really running out of steam, and constantly improving on itself even, in more and more detail and more connections. Just an incredible, incredible world.
Okay. All right. Well, sounds pretty long-winded.
Fitting for an 1,100 chapter show.
Yeah. On the other hand, Avatar has 3 seasons, can binge it pretty quickly, depending on your sleep schedule and everything. But anyway, since we're pretending you're unfamiliar, I'll just describe a little bit of its animation style. So it's kind of a combination of like anime with American cartoons, and it really heavily relies on imagery that are primarily Chinese culture, but also from some other East Asian, Southeast Asian, South Asian culture, as well as from the New World, like Siberian culture and Arctic influences. So in this world, there are 4 nations that are defined by the 4 elements. So you have the water tribes, northern and southern water tribes, the earth kingdom, the fire nation, and the air nomads. And in this world, certain people from each of these groups have the ability to control elements, and these people are called benders. So you have air benders, water benders, fire benders, earth benders, and their bending skills are kind of modeled after different martial arts. And there is one person who holds the ability to control all 4 elements, and that is the Avatar. And the Avatar is responsible for maintaining harmony among the world's 4 nations. And they're also serving as the link between the physical world and the spirit world. So there's only allowed to be one avatar at a time. That's just kind of how it works. When one avatar dies, they're reincarnated into the next avatar, and they follow through a cycle of the elements that follows which the first avatar learned his skills. So it's fire, air, water, earth. So Aang, who is the main character, is an airbender. He's the last airbender because the previous avatar was a firebender, like from the Fire Nation. So it kind of follows that cycle. So 100 years before the animated series begins, the leader of the Fire Nation, Fire Lord Sozin, begins a war to conquer the other 3 nations and rebuild the world in a vision of the Fire Nation. However, during the beginning of the war, the Avatar at the time, Avatar Roku, disappears. And so after his disappearance, the Fire Nations are hoping to break the Avatar cycle so that they can just, completely end the Avatar and kind of take over. So they commit this genocide against the Air Nomads, which is where Aang was from, but he wasn't at home. Basically, he had left, and when he leaves and when all his people are genocided, he is frozen in the ocean. And 100 years later, Katara and Sokka, who are both from the Southern Water Tribe, Katara is a waterbender and Sokka is kind of in charge of protecting the village. They end up discovering Aang and kind of unfreeze him, along with his air bison, Appa. And so from there, the 3 of them kind of begin their journey to help Aang master all 4 elements and bring harmony back to the world between the 4 nations because, in the 100 years that Aang was frozen, the Fire Nation had taken over and kind of pillaged their way through the world. So
it's kind of like a Captain America sort of thing.
You could say that.
Frozen in ice, the main connection, yeah.
For decades at a time.
So they're, in addition to having him master all 4 elements, they're also having to escape the current son who's currently exiled. He's the son of the Fire Lord, Prince Zuko, who was exiled, and the only way he can go back is to find the Avatar so he can reclaim the throne and everything like that, because he's kind of seeking this approval from his father. So as I mentioned earlier, it's like the show is just a nuanced blend between Eastern culture and Western culture, both in its design, but also just in its source material too. So for instance, the water tribes are more similar to Inuit and Yupik cultures. And the Earth Kingdom is very much like the Ming and Qing dynasties from China, with one of the cities, the fake cities in Avatar, Ba Sing Se, is kind of modeled after the Forbidden City in China. The air nomads are based more upon Tibetan and Hindu culture. You can see that in their designs and their spiritual aspect of their nature. And then the Fire Nation is more similar to Japan with the symbols of the sun and some other aspects we don't need to get into. But yeah, I think that paints a pretty good picture of the world that Avatar: The Last Airbender takes place in. If you can't picture it in your mind now, then I didn't do a good job.
I picture it. I can picture it. So it's none of this monkey business, is what you're saying.
There are some other animals, like I did mention the air bison. There's a little lemur guy named Momo, who's pretty cute.
Yes, there's a big.
There's a big
I don't know
Momo.
if lemurs are monkeys. I don't know.
We'll see. That's for another debate.
Lemurs.
So I got a little sense of both of your stories and worlds that you're kind of describing for me, because obviously you're painting the picture, but the picture in my mind was already there. So
Because you're very familiar with both of them.
because I'm very familiar with both of these. Tell me about, in your stories, in your shows, tell me about your favorite characters, because that's what I want to know. I want to know the heart of this. Like, what's your favorite character?
So I will say that Monkey D. Luffy is one of the best main characters of anything. But I'm not going to talk about him. But I do want to say that him and his incredibly, he can never get bogged down. He always wants to help people. He's trying to become the king of the pirates, but along the way he's helping everyone that he meets. But I want to talk about one character whose backstory I find very, very interesting, and also has a great connection to the overall theme of the series and one of the main conflicts of the series. So it's Nico Robin. Her backstory is really tragic, and initially she's a villain. And she has an ability. So what Monkey D. Luffy has is he ate a devil fruit. So that gives people certain abilities. So he is basically a rubber man. So he can stretch, he can bounce things off himself. Other people have eaten other different devil fruits that have different abilities. No two people can have the same exact one at the same time. So Robin's is that she can sprout different parts of her body in different places. So she usually will sprout 2 arms onto someone and crack their neck or something like that in combat. Or she'll sprout a bunch of arms and make wings and stuff. She'll put her ear somewhere so that she can hear something far away, and be sneaky in that way. But I don't know if we ever see, at least for where I'm in the story, when she first had that devil fruit, or unless I'm forgetting. But we see her backstory as a little kid, and she's basically ostracized from her community. All the other kids consider her a monster because of what she can do. Well, let me go. Sorry, getting out of order.
Getting way ahead of yourself.
I'm getting ahead of myself by going back into the backstory too early. So when she does join the crew, because she eventually does join the crew, her goal, because everyone in the crew has a different goal. Her goal is to read these ancient stone tablets known as poneglyphs that are spread throughout the world that are supposed to detail a lost history of the world that the current world government is actively trying to suppress. And the theory is that they were left behind by some ancient civilization that this current world government defeated and then erased. There's a 100-year gap that no one knows about. And the government basically considers it to be a crime to investigate and try and research that, even just trying to get knowledge about it. So we see her at a young age, as I said. She has been left behind by her mother, who is an archaeologist, who has gone out to do this research on these poneglyphs. And she's been left in the care of her brother and sister-in-law, but they turn out to be kind of cruel and uncaring toward her. So young Robin starts to study archaeology herself because she wants to be like her mother. And she studies with these scholars at the Tree of Knowledge in the land that she's from, Ohara. And they're the only people that really are her only friends really in the world. She becomes this genius scholar at 8 years old, and is even able to, not all the people can read the poneglyphs because they're in an ancient language, but she's able to read them. But she's warned that this is dangerous knowledge that she's supposed to stay away from. So her mom comes back because she's been stopped by the world government, or the rest of the scholars have been killed. The mom comes back and is warning them that the world government's coming to send an armada to kill all the scholars just for researching this history and for having this poneglyph that they're researching. So they arrest all the archaeologists. When they discover they have the poneglyph, the government sentences them all to death by this thing called a buster call that's going to basically destroy all life on the island. So they warn everyone that's not a scholar to leave. And
that sounds very appropriate pursuit. Like, they wanted to learn something and they're going to destroy everything.
Yeah, well, there must be some reason that they're trying to suppress this, this knowledge. People finding out this knowledge. So they tell everyone else on the island to leave or invade these evacuation ships, but one of the commanders goes rogue and decides to blow up that ship just in case a scholar had tried to escape on it, just to completely kill everyone on the island. So Robin is eventually able to escape the island and becomes its only survivor of this civilization that was completely destroyed. She barely sees her mother for a moment and has a really tearful goodbye with her as her mother goes no, she tells this giant who is helping them to take Robin to safety. And she gets to see her mother for a moment, but her mother is also killed with the rest of the people on the island. And from then on,
not really funny, Mucci. She died.
I know, it's super sad. From then on, from the age of 8, she has a bounty. She's branded a criminal, and she has to live under threat of being arrested by the world government from the age of 8. So back in the present, her friends are also threatened with the same buster call if Robin doesn't give herself up to the world government willingly. And she knows what that means. She knows they're all going to be killed if she doesn't give herself up. So she just tells them no, I'm a burden on you. I just want to die. And but when she remembers this, she remembers what this person told her. Jaguar Esau, he told her right before he was also killed on Ohara, that one day she would find friends who would accept and protect her somewhere out at sea, and that no one in this world is born to be alone. So she remembers that, and she starts crying, and she tells Luffy, I want to live. And this is one of the most iconic moments in the whole series. Luffy's okay, great. He shoots down the world's government flag and basically declares war on the world government to save his friend, which sets up the entire conflict of the rest of the series. And the One Piece might have some connection to what this ancient history is of that the government is trying to suppress.
It sounds like, that's probably the key to everything.
Yeah.
Might be the One Piece.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some knowledge about that. They do One Piece.
So I forgot what the fucking question was. You want to tell us some characters that you like?
All right, well, before I get into my favorite characters, I just want to state my opinion that Avatar: The Last Airbender has such strong characters and character writing. A lot of people characterize the show as a masterclass in character development. And I think, these characters feel real, they have flaws, and they have room to grow. And not grow just by themselves, but also grow with the audience and also with their voice actors. So unlike typical cartoons at the time where adult women voice actors were hired to voice children's characters, like Tommy Pickles from Rugrats and Bart Simpson, who maybe even might be the same voice actor. Avatar hired child voice actors whose voices changed and aged alongside the characters too.
Sounds illegal, maybe.
Is that going to be your legal question?
Actually.
Leading us to our third question.
So, as the voice actors were children, Aang at the time, was a child when he was frozen. He was only 12 years old, so he was playful and childish, and kind of took life a little lightly. And then he found out he was the Avatar, and then he fled.
Life came at him fast.
Right, and so 100 years later, he's rewoken and finds out that everyone he knew at the time when he was 12, is now dead. The world is in chaos with the war happening, and he's struggling, with being a kid, but also at the same time he's the Avatar with this huge responsibility of the role that he was born into. So he's, becomes kind of this deeply introspective and thoughtful character, but still maintains some of his like innocence, childlike innocence. But I think people get a lot about Aang just from watching the show, and I kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about the villains from the Fire Nation. So first and foremost, we got Prince Zuko, who I mentioned earlier, who's currently exiled by his father to hunt down the Avatar, and he's taking this assignment a little too seriously. He is so desperate to seek the attention and the validation from his dad, and he wants to regain his honor and reclaim the throne to the Fire Nation. And a lot of people view Prince Zuko's redemption arc as one of the best redemption arcs of all time. I don't know how...
Should be a Wikipedia source needed.
I don't know all of the redemption arcs that exist in the entire world, but I think Prince Zuko, his redemption arc is pretty good. So, he goes from this somewhat like determined nature to hunt down the Avatar at all costs to becoming a Fire Lord by the end of the series that's now prepared to rebuild the whole world after the war that the Fire Nation itself started. And along with Prince Zuko, there's also Azula, Prince Zuko's sister, who is also a villain, along with their dad, the Fire Lord, obviously, who is mostly consistently villainy throughout. But his sister, at least, is a little more nuanced because she had these high expectations growing up from her family of kind of always needing to be perfect and being on the top of everyone, all of her fellow firebenders in her classes and stuff like that. And she was indoctrinated in the Fire Nation propaganda. And I think that's just such a good contrast, the sibling nature between Zuko and Azula, in contrast with Sokka and Katara from the Water Tribe, the Southern Water Tribe, because they grew up, kind of in the remnants of the Fire Nation attack on their village. Mm-hmm. Their parents aren't around, they have to take care of each other, and they really truly care of each other, whereas Azula and Zuko are kind of at conflict throughout most of the show, if not the entire show. Yeah. And then, separately from that, from the Fire Nation, I just wanted to honorary mention Uncle Iroh, the tea guy. He's one of my favorites because he's so chill, and he understands, his brother's kind of crazy and everything. And then the cabbage salesman. So he's pretty awesome. My cabbages. All right, those are some of my favorite characters.
Nice. Okay. All right. Well, you look like you were going to say something.
No. I see how much detail I went into for one character, and that was 8 characters.
We don't need any more.
Yeah, I think it was 6, maybe 7.
You snuck that cabbage salesman in there at the end. So.
I'll make it 8 with Momo. I like Momo a lot too.
That might have swayed me though. The cabbage salesman, he might have gotten to me. But before we get to our last question, the legal question, I would just like to ask everyone that's listening, watching us, subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on social media, and thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Mm-hmm. So, Counsel, I understand that you have an expert witness that you want to share with us?
Yeah, I'd like to call on Raul from Senor Nerd Podcast, which is a podcast that discusses current and past pop culture events, including but not limited to movies, streaming services, anime, video games, and current breaking news.
Okay. Any objection from Mucci?
No objection. I'm actually wondering if he'll help me as well.
Huh. We'll see.
Especially with a focus on anime.
All right. Well, first of all, thanks, Raul, for joining us. My first question for you is, I know that you have seen both live-action adaptations of Avatar: The Last Airbender as well as One Piece, and I was wondering, in your opinion, what makes a good live-action adaptation?
Hi. Thank you for that question. So with animes, it's kind of been a mixed bag with live action adaptations. I know you guys talked about the Death Note live action that came out a couple years ago.
So disappointed. Was so disappointed in it. It was. Yeah. I love Death Note, and it was. They're redoing it though, so
Yeah.
Here's hoping.
Hopefully it's more. It goes in line with the anime a little bit more. But yeah. More recently that they did a Yu Yu Hakusho. They've done obviously the One Piece and Avatar, and a few other ones. And I even think there's a few like Full Metal Alchemist live action movies that came out. But typically the issue with live action anime adaptations is that they either whitewash it if it's done in the U.S. or they completely go a different route with the story or the casting. And it just looks ridiculous. But with both of these animes, well, if you consider Avatar an anime, it's definitely done a lot more faithfully. And I think a big part of that is kind of the beginnings of it. With One Piece, they did have the original creator of One Piece involved in the whole process. With the Avatar, the creators of the animated series were involved in the beginning, and then kind of halfway through, they did leave the program for kind of in a big public display of not affection. They kind of blew it up a little bit and made a big scene about it, but it was for creative differences. And then after actually seeing the Avatar live action, I understand, because in the live action for Avatar, it was a lot more serious, geared a little bit older than the animated series. But it's also, in general, it's really hard to do a faithful live action adaptation, because anime tends to be pretty fantastical, and it tends to be, especially like One Piece. You have these huge differences in sizes, with giant people, and really differently shaped people. You have animal people. You have weird like powers that people do, and as a lot of people have sadly seen with Avatar, the movie that came out with M. Night Shyamalan, that was very badly done in most people's opinion.
That was the twist. He's always got twists in his movies. People were expecting it to be good, and it ended up bad.
Yeah. I saw it in theaters because I was a big fan of Avatar. So I saw it in theaters and came out excited that there was a movie, but kind of disappointed in how it was done, and it definitely had a potential, and I saw what he tried to possibly do, but it was just so badly done that everyone kind of discounts it and pretends that it never existed.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite character from Avatar as a big fan, and do you think that the live action version, stayed true to that character, or made any differences that you liked or didn't like?
So that's kind of like a mixed thing, because in the anime series, and for a lot of people, Sokka is a big fan. Or a lot of people are big fans of Sokka because of his humor, and he's kind of he's the comic relief. And it's a lot of the kind of dumb humor and some small things that are meant to entertain kids. But it's and I'm a big guy for dad jokes and puns and all that stuff, so I was all about it. And in the live action, they completely steered. They made him a lot more serious. There was some comedic moments where he's like falling for girls all the time, which was always a thing. But he doesn't have those jokes that he had in the animated series. So my next up is probably Toph. But she was nowhere in this season yet. If they decide to do another season, that's when she would come in. But I honestly think that the one that they probably did the best is Katara.
Okay.
I've heard some people say that they weren't big fans of her acting, and I did have some issues with some of the story, because they didn't really show a lot of the build-up in her training and stuff like that. But I think that she had some great moments acting-wise, and I think it was cast pretty well. And I did like Sokka in a different way, but he didn't really. He wasn't my favorite anymore in the live action.
Yeah, from what I've seen so far, I think the casting was pretty good, spot on. Like a lot of them, look like the characters, and even the actor who plays Sokka, I feel like his voice sounds pretty similar to the voice actor as well. But yeah, I'm excited to watch the rest of it.
Yeah, and I think so. I guess the big thing is there's really no character that blows you away.
Okay.
In the live action, kind of compared to the anime series, everyone's so different that you can pick and choose like which one's your favorite based off of like who you are. But in the live action, it's a little bit different. Everyone does well, but nobody like blows it out of the water. But I know Iroh is a big fan favorite.
Yeah, he's one of my faves.
Yeah, in the anime series, and in the live action, he's pretty good too. So like he and even with Prince Zuko, he's pretty good too. But he hasn't had his redemption yet. So
yeah.
We'll see if he ever gets it, then he'll probably make up some ground there.
Cool.
So, are we saying that it's just kind of a more? You're saying this just a more serious kind of approach to it? Probably to get the more general audience, right? I mean, since it's not going to be as geared to kids.
Yeah. I think slightly that way. They definitely they have adapted the story and changed a few parts. They shortened some things. They expanded on other things. Like the fight scenes, I feel are a little bit more elaborate, a little bit more extensive than the animated show was. And because it is live action, you do see, especially like in the beginning, in the first episode, right in the beginning, you see the actual Fire Nation invasion of the air temples. So where in the animated series they only talk about it,
right?
But you see people being burned alive. Like you don't see like burnt skin and stuff like that, but you see like burned bodies, like burning bodies and stuff like that. So it's definitely geared towards a little bit older, probably like teenagers, maybe tweens, depending on with parental
permission.
But yeah. But it's definitely a little bit older, and I think One Piece was definitely geared younger than the anime.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
It was a little bit too graphic for Mucci.
I think a guy gets cut in half in the live action, right? Like, doesn't Zoro cut someone in half in the first?
Oh, he does.
Yeah, but that happens in every kids magician show too.
Yeah, from one of the crocodile guys.
Yeah, right. One of the Baroque works or something. Yeah. If I could jump in and just ask one, just like question for fun. Do you have any theories about what the One Piece actually is, or any fun, headcanon for that?
So at this point, I just think that there is no actual One Piece. I don't think it's an actual physical thing. It could be like the truth or something more abstract, or the friends that you make along the way kind of thing.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Did you want to plug your podcast, Senor Nerd, at all? Any upcoming episodes or?
So we're
gonna be releasing this pretty soon. So this week. So anything coming up?
Yeah. So our most recent episode was on one of our Ramon, one of the people on the podcast. He's kind of a little bit further behind on anime from me and Carlos. So he finally finished Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. So our most recent episode was on that. We're going to be talking about the Avatar Last Airbender series in the next episode.
Nice.
And then we're still doing requests from people. So more recently, we've done the Susume and Your Name movies.
Oh, nice.
We've had like a few other requests for some like older movies as well. So it's going to be interesting to kind of go back to early 2000s and 90s movies that we haven't seen since we were kids. So.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah, that sounds
I
so
love those
good.
movies.
Thank you so much for getting on here, Raul.
Of course.
Thank you.
So our third question, as always, is a legal question. I don't have a specific legal question for you guys. It's just going to be general. I don't even know where to start with these. I mean, we've got child actors, we've got, pirates that are just not bending to the authority. So it could go any way with this one, I think. So you guys tell me what you want to tell me, I guess.
Well, yeah, that's actually a good jumping off point for me because the pirates in this show are doing things that are against the law, but the law may not be just. Okay. So what One Piece kind of advocates for is a defiance of legal authority that is unjust. Basically, legal authority is allowed to be, a ruler can have legal authority when they're accepted by society as being in power, and society gives them a rule of recognition, recognizing their pronouncements as law. However, legal authority breaks down when society no longer accepts a norm as valid law, breaking the rule of recognition so that the ruler has to rule either by fear or force. And so a story like One Piece demonstrates that these rules of recognition that are based on lies collapse when the truth is exposed. So, as I mentioned before, this world government is suppressing the truth of what happened 800 years ago. There's this gap from like 900 to 800 years ago of history that may make them look bad, or like they just suppressed or took over someone else and completely erased them from history in a way. So they make it against the law to try to even learn the truth. And they say that the government says that, well, like they're trying to resurrect this ancient weapon. That's why this is dangerous. When in reality, they're probably just trying to find out really what happened and why this authority is even in power and whether they should be in power. So in One Piece, certain laws may be legally valid but morally offensive. So, for example, the world government protects these world nobles known as the Celestial Dragons, and they're not actual dragons; they're just humans, but they're descendants of the initial ruling party that took over the other party, the other group that was in power before it, and they basically enslave and traffic people. Anyone they consider a lesser species, that includes other humans, includes giants, it includes mer people, fishmen. And the world government turns a blind eye to these practices and actually literally calls them something other than slavery or trafficking to try to justify them. So the world government protects these kind of horrible rulers just because they're in power, and it is considered against the law to strike one of these world nobles. And of course, Monkey D. Luffy punches one of them right in the face when he is trying to enslave this mermaid named Kami. Not Cammy, but Kami, who Luffy is one of their new friends, and whether or not he's a friend, Luffy is going to punch him because it is not right to enslave people, and Luffy has this unstoppable moral compass to stand up to whoever is in power, no matter what they're doing.
Essentially, Luffy doesn't give a fuck.
No.
Okay, I think I like him a little bit more now. All right,
Yeah, so I'm going to bring this to the real world, outside of the universe of Avatar: The Last Airbender. But basically, at the time this came out, Avatar started airing in February 2004, and a lot of more people, I think, are more familiar with James Cameron's Avatar, which over 4 years later released in theaters in 2009. But there was a tweet in 2020.
Came up with a sequel.
Yeah.
Many, many years later.
Yeah.
I'll get into that shortly. But there was a tweet from an animator named Giancarlo Volpe, who directed 19 episodes of Avatar: The Last Airbender. He tweeted in 2002, in 2004, we learned that we had to change the name of our show from Avatar to Avatar: The Last Airbender because James Cameron already had the rights to a movie called Avatar. Now the sequel is called The Way of Water. If part 3 is The Firebending Masters, we riot. So of course he's referencing, I can't say of course because I haven't seen Avatar or The Way of Water, but he's referencing how the element of water is an important role in the sequel of James Cameron's Avatar, which is kind of ironic. And then actually, I just read Avatar 3, which comes out in 2025, is going to introduce ash people who can control fire.
Okay.
So kind of Giancarlo Volpe was maybe predicting that. Yeah, and this new ash people from the Avatar universe are living on like a volcanic land in Pandora, which also the Fire Nation in Avatar: The Last Airbender live on volcanic islands. I don't know the legality of all of this, but it sounds like James Cameron is trolling. So
he seems sketch about this whole thing. That's too coincidental.
Yeah. So now we have Avatar: The Last Airbender. You'll see it often abbreviated as ATLA. And maybe in a different world we could have just called it Avatar and not been confused. But yeah, they lost the rights. I guess I can't say they lost the rights. They never had the rights because James Cameron had them the whole time. But,
James Cameron, those submarines. Okay, so it's at this point where just give me a brief closing argument. I've heard all there is to be heard. Just give me like a sentence or two.
Okay, well, I did want to just talk about, in my closing, some theories on what the One Piece might be. And instead of going into all the stuff I wrote down, whatever the One Piece is, it must be tied to this history of the world that I keep referencing, this hidden history. And finding out about whatever's on the last island must provide some sort of enlightenment to everything that's going on. But Eiichiro Oda has said that he didn't want to make a story where the journey was more important than the destination. He wants the destination to be super important and not be just like, oh yeah, but the journey was great. So, but what One Piece I think does is ties the journey to the destination. So I think it's been referenced that whatever is on the final island, they're not ready to know it yet. They're only ready to know it by going to all these other lands, encountering these people, and seeing their struggles and seeing their backgrounds and helping them out. And it ties to this overall thesis statement of the series that seems to be that one can only truly understand the world by engaging with, understanding, and supporting other people of various backgrounds who are struggling together against oppression by the few powerful people who pull the strings of the world. And that central theme to me is incredibly inspirational at its core, and it's one of the many reasons why One Piece resonates so deeply with so many people that call it one of the best stories ever written, and why I think it kind of rises above the comparatively just straightforward story of Avatar. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That was exactly 2 sentences. Your closing argument, please.
Yeah, I think, although Avatar may seem straightforward, I will just mention that one of the creators for the show had a goal in mind when he was making it. And to quote, "The biggest goal I had was for Mike and I and everyone who has worked on the show along the way to finish telling the story. It would have been a shame if it were cut short before we could share the ending." And I think that they accomplished that goal by keeping it to 3 seasons. You finish the story, and it's not, a straightforward story, but it was such a great story. And as a personal matter for me, Avatar: The Last Airbender, as I mentioned earlier, it's such a detailed and compelling fantasy world that was a blend of Eastern and Western cultures. And for me, as an Asian American kid, like, the fact that it was so popular and well received and still well regarded among so many fans, it just makes me feel special. Yeah, so thanks.
Okay. It's going to be a tough one for me because these are 2 shows that I really, really enjoy. And I just remember as a kid watching The Last Airbender over and over again each season. Guys, I'm going to be completely honest with you, actually. I can't do it anymore. Before tonight, I probably had watched an episode of The Last Airbender. I recognize the names vaguely, but I've learned so much from both shows, and you guys did great, and it really does make me want to, watch maybe the live action. I'll start with the live action, I think.
Good place to start with One Piece.
Because
our expert witness said they're decent.
Yeah, I think I'll start there because One Piece being so long, and the live action might cut it down for me a little bit. The Last Airbender, Avatar, might be a little too kiddish with the animation and the Nickelodeon.
Cabbage salesman.
I heard something about Tommy Pickles. I don't know if he's a character in there or not, but
Same network.
so hearing all I've heard, I think I'm going to have to give it to One Piece. Mucci, you're very passionate about this. I'm sure we're going to hear about One Piece for fucking months to come, but I'm going to give it to One Piece.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right, congrats.
Thank you.
Thank you. So at the end of all this, Mucci wins. This has been OTR Debate.
Wish it could be by a judge like that. Thanks,
My
guys.
cabbages.